All right, what's up, guys? What I wanted to do is I want to pull up the Google Slides that are going to be the first um, section for you guys that we'll be able to go over. Hopefully, this will be coming up very shortly. Let's see, where we at? Here we are. Let's see if this will work. Share. Okay. Insert format. Why am I drawing a blank right now? Getting there. I promise. Here we go. This is what I want. Okay. So we're going to talk about the scientific method and its use in the real world. So it's basically the simple 6 steps that we always talk about when we talk about the scientific method. So when we talk about trying to figure out questions in science, how do we answer questions in science? Okay, there's a 6-step method that we use, and it's called the scientific method. Scientific notation is something completely different. But the scientific method of the 6 steps, and the 6 steps are: 1, you want to ask a question, okay, and you want to ask a question that is something that you are going to be interested in because it's going to be the thing that you are going to do the research on. So why would you ask a question that you don't care what the answer is, or could care less of what the answer is? And I totally get that, because you're not going to do the work that you need to do to be able to not only answer the question, but to answer it completely. And that's one of the things that we'll talk about with the scientific method. So the second piece is research. So once you come up with the question that you want to try to solve, you want to research that topic, because it could be done ad nauseum thousands of times over and over and over again, and everybody comes up with the same answer. So then why are you even going to try to do it? Because it's already been basically proven to happen over and over and over again. So once you've done your research, once you've asked your question, you need to formulate a hypothesis. What do you think is going to happen? An educated guess, okay? It's usually an if-then statement. If this happens, then this will happen. So you formulate your hypothesis and you come up with what you think is going to happen. And then you test that hypothesis. And then how do you test the hypothesis? You test it by doing experiments, okay? You set up your experiments, and that will allow you, and they must be easily replicated, and you be able to get the same, not the same information, but be able to collect your data from those experiments rather easily. And then once you do collect your data, you have to record it and analyze it in tables, graphs, however you want to do that. So that's going to be recording and analyzing your data. And with that, as you analyze your data, that's when you find out whether or not the data that you have collected will either support or refute the hypothesis that you've come up with. And then once you're done, you communicate your findings. So for you guys at this level, it's basically doing lab reports. For other writers, for other scientists who do this, they're going to write in medical journals. They're going to write articles. They're going to publish whatever they have, so they can become famous. Not really, but there are many scientists who are narcissistic enough that, sorry, one of the reasons why they do it is because they do want to become famous in the end. Okay, so let's look at the scientific method in pictures. First, come up with your question. And it's a question that, like I said, that interests you. Then do your research. So let's talk about research, and let's talk about what are good things for research. I am one of the very few teachers who will tell you use Wikipedia. Just don't cite it, but use it, especially if it has the list of reliable sources that each entry usually has. That is a great jumping off point. That will be able to help you get to as much research as you need as possible. and it will help you keep your sanity as well, because you'll be able to at least follow along and say, okay, this doesn't really apply to me, but this does. So then you're able to use it that way. So yes, make sure you use Wikipedia, but don't cite it. The other good sources, especially online, are usually, I'm not saying all the time, but usually the .orgs and the .edus. Try to stay away from .coms. They can be a little bit biased in terms of nature. Not all the time, but sometimes they are. And that could affect your research and could affect what your hypothesis would be. All right. So formula hypothesis, what do you think is going to happen? What's going to happen is Smith's probably going to fall asleep. All right. So formula hypothesis, it's an educated guess. Okay. Based on your research, based on your question, based on your research, what do you think is going to be the end result? What is going to be your if-end statement? All right. And then you're going to test your hypothesis. You're going to create and perform experiments that are easily replicated. You don't want to create a 3-hour experiment that's going to waste all this time and waste resources, and that you're not going to really get enough data out of to be able to say yes or no that this is going to happen. Easily replicated. Keyword for testing your hypothesis. All right. Then once you've gone through the testing, you make and record your observations. Do you do it just once? No. You need to do it, or at least have a sample size that is going to be large enough that makes sense, that you're going to be able to eliminate your outliers, because everybody's going to get outliers. And when we talk about statistics and we talk about numbers and we talk about all the things, is that, you know, when we get an average, there's always going to be some at the high end, some at the low end. You may get this crazy number that's either crazy high or crazy low. That's what we call an outlier. Okay, because it doesn't really fit into what most of your data, the range of most of your data is. Okay, but that high number or low number can really throw off your median. It won't throw off your average as long as you have enough there, but if it could throw off your median, which could be an issue. And we'll talk about the difference between me getting a good night's sleep. No, we'll talk about the difference between an average and we talk about median later on. So you're going to observe, record, and interpret your data. Okay. You're going to take your data from your experiment, record it, put it in tables, put it in charts, however you want to organize it. That's going to be good for you. Okay. And then ultimately you publish your results. Get famous, but be ready, because people, if you come out with something new, people are going to want to tear down what you're trying to do, because in the end, it's human nature, but in the end, we aren't always happy for those of us that are working against other people. Sometimes you would think that scientists would all be on the same team and want to get to the, say, a cure for cancer. Not always the case. Okay, not always the case. But because some people want to be glory hounds and get to it before other people, and they will use other people's information that has either been published or been leaked out to try to get to a bigger end than the people who are actually working on it. So just be ready. You get ready to publish your results. Get ready for a crap ton of questioning. Why did you do it this way? Why'd you do it this way? How do you know that this data is real? Da, 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 da. So you're going to get a lot of that. Unfortunately, that's how it works. All right. So step by step. Step by step. Oh, baby. I'll stop. So step one, come up with a question. One, why? Why does it have to be something you are interested in? Well, it only makes sense because you're going to actually want to find out what the answer is in the end if it's interesting you. If it's not interesting you, you could care less, and that will come across to your audience as well. Okay, but you want to be specific about it. You don't want it to be too broad. You want to make sure that you narrow it down, and that's why you do research to answer your question. Okay, that's why to start your question off and to be able to set and say, hey, this is what I really want to do. That research will help you to be able to
narrow down what your scope needs to be. Okay. You got to have a starting point. You don't want to have, like, you got to know where to start. People get overwhelmed when they're doing tasks because they're not really sure where to start. And in that, by knowing where to start, you'll be able to make a specific statement. So a specific statement would be in terms of growing bean plants. So do bean plants grow better in direct sunlight, indirect sunlight, or shade? That is specific. Those are answers that you'll be able to get to the end of, and you'll be able to say, okay, this falls in this category, this falls in this category, this falls in this category, as opposed to being a too broad of a statement. In what conditions do plants grow best? Well, first of all, it depends on the plant, and it depends on thousands of different combinations of what might be the best. So you need to make sure that you are coming up with something that has a starting point, something that has a specific statement, and something that you'll be able to actually record the data from. All right, so step 2, do your research. 1, sound smart. Allow yourself an intelligent hypothesis formation by actually going through and looking into the different pieces of what you are looking to answer the question for. A variety. Always use a variety of sources. For me growing up, not having the internet, our internet was going to the encyclopedias, to be honest. That's all it was. Okay, you guys have multiple sources that you're able to use. Know what the good sources are, .orgs, .edus, use Wikipedia as a starting off point, find books, find journal articles, use the internet wisely, and I'll say this too, and use AI wisely. Just if you use something that's AI written, make sure, and you don't change it at all, make sure you are citing it. Because if you are not, then you are trying to pass that off as your own, and that is cheating, and that's going to be a 0 whatever you do. All right? Cite everything. Everything that is not your own original thought. If you're not going to do it, it's cheating. Don't. It's very simple to cite. Don't be lazy. Because if I find out that you're cheating, it's going to be a bigger problem and it's going to be a phone call. All right? So don't do it. All right. So your hypothesis. Step 1, make an educated guess. Using your research, common sense, and any knowledge you have of something, make a simple statement about what you think is going to happen. Okay? And make it a what statement, not why. You're not explaining here. You're explaining what is, you're not explaining anything. What your hypothesis is what's going to happen. It doesn't have an excuse. It doesn't have a reason. It doesn't have an explanation. It's just this is what is going to happen. Okay. And it must be testable, easily replicated if so. All right. And then you want to make your if then statement. If this happens, then this will be the result. Notice the what, not explaining the result, but just the what, that this is what's going to happen. All right. 4, what if I'm wrong? Then I've wasted all my time. No, you have not. Actually, if you don't prove your hypothesis, it could point you down a road that you weren't expected to go to. Okay. That's all part of that scientific process. So no, you didn't waste your time. And I'll make the argument that anybody who hasn't done anything wrong, hasn't learned anything. That's a true statement because you should be learning from whatever happened. Now, if there's something that biased it or you did something wrong in the experiment, that's a different story. Okay, then you need to go back and fix it and then complete all that again. All right. But if everything's good, there's no bias, there's no other issues, don't change your hypothesis. If the data does not bear it out and does not say, hey, yes, your hypothesis is true, don't change it. Okay, don't change it. First of all, it's not. I'm trying to think of the right way to say it. It would be silly for you to do that, all right? Because who cares? Nobody knows whether or not you were correct or not. If you're not correct, it could open you up to an entire new avenue of research that you could go and do and say, hey, you know what? I started with this. I started going down this road, but now I want to go down this road because this is where the data led me. So just be smart about that. That's all. All right. 4, your experiment. Okay.
Here's your experiment. What's the first thing? You got to create a procedure and a materials list. Okay. It's a cleared, detailed list of materials and the steps that you're going to follow for that experiment. Make sure you have your control pieces in place. Okay. Your independent variable and your control group. The independent variable are the things that you manipulate. So in terms of the plant, it would be how much sunlight are they getting? How much water are you giving them? Et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And then you have your control group, which is what, so if we're doing bean plants, you should have 25 bean plants in your control group, 25 bean plants in your experimental group. Okay. Your control group, you get the data from that and you compare the data that you have from your experiment group, and that'll tell you whether or not what you've done works or not. Okay. And there should only be one dependent variable you're measuring with each experiment. So that being said, get your data, measure it. Okay. So in this case, let's talk about the bean plants. You have 25 bean plants that you're going to give 4 hours of sunlight to and 6 ounces of water every day, every 24-hour period. Okay. That's your control group. So whatever your numbers are there, that's what would be considered the normal growth. Then you have your experimental group. Okay. You have your experimental group, which